Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Tanner's Favorite Things. I'm Tanner Knight, and today we're going to talk about my drum journey. And I know that we've been focusing on drums a lot on this channel recently, and maybe a lot of you found me through guitar content and kind of, I don't know, hopefully no one feels bamboozled by that, but I love the drums as equally as I love the guitar, the bass, and actually vocals, and the keys too. So there's a fifth element even there for me. So I love all of them equally, and I try to spend my musical capital on each fairly equally as well. But having said that, I gravitate towards the drums. And I didn't pick up the drums at a young age, unfortunately. I actually had to wait until I was around 36 or 7 before I actually got my first kit and started devoting time to understanding the instrument and trying to get better at playing it and understanding the history of it as well. The history portion being kind of the common theme on everything on this channel, I like to give a really thorough history of whatever item we're talking about, whether it's a guitar, whether it's a drum set, whether it's a block of cheese, which if you haven't caught that, I'll link it in the description below. But I cannot escape the fact that lately, maybe over the past year and a half, 2 years, the drums have occupied a slightly larger piece of the pie of my heart. So the drums is where I've spent more time practicing, more time deep diving, and more time just understanding the world of drums. And obviously, I think I came to the game a little too late to know it all. I'll never know it all, and I understand that. And as a result, I want you to know that I'm coming at the drums as a student, always. I don't consider myself a master of the drums. I don't consider myself a guru by any means, but I'm capable of doing a little internet Googling and finding out some history of some things. And you'd be surprised at what you can find if you just deep dive down a topic and maybe go to a forum or two or go to Reddit, pick up a manual. A lot of them have manuals in PDF form that you can view today on their websites. So that's a cool resource that's available to you and I take advantage of. So that's kind of where my heart has lied. And as a result, that's been the focus of this channel. So I'm not going to say that's going to be the only thing we talk about moving forward. Obviously, I love the rest of them equally and we'll find ways to pepper them in. But just understand that that's where my focus has been as of late. So let's start with the drum journey and dive right into where I started as a drummer. And I'll try to have pictures of all of my kits. I believe I should be able to provide all of those, but we'll have pictures of everything and kind of give you a rundown of what I can remember starting about, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, we'll say. My very first drum kit was a Pulse. Just a rock-sized kit. I believe it was a 12, a 13, and a 16-inch tom with a 22 by 16-inch kick. Very common, middle-of-the-road sizes, but the kit was probably from the 2000s or 2010s. I haven't really spent too much time deep diving on the brand Pulse because it seems like it's just a cheapo Chinese brand, and they kind of flooded the market in that 2010s era. So that's kind of what I'm thinking this Pulse kit was. And it was nothing special, but it actually produced musical sounds, I'll say. And it wasn't like I knew how to tune a drum or anything. It was just like, let's crank these heads and get them in a place where they sound okay. And I made some musical sounds with that thing. And I'm not saying that it was anything I wish to present to you right now. So if you're hoping to hear that kit, I don't know, maybe I'll dig up a clip and post an audio of that kit, but we'll see. Either way, it was kind of a lower tier, or not even kind of, it was a lower tier kit. And I bought it from my cousin for $100, and it was his first drum set as an adult as well. We both kind of got back into jamming together when I was like 38 or so. And we kind of exchanged instruments, and the Pulse kit was my cousin's. So that's where I acquired it, $100. It got me going, and It was something that I felt not proud to play on, but at least I wasn't ashamed to play on it, we'll say. So that was my very first drum kit, the Pulse in those rock sizes. And I don't regret selling that drum set. I think I sold it for 50 bucks. So I got my 50 bucks worth, and someone else probably got their 50 bucks worth out of it too. You know, you'd be surprised at what garbage shells can sound like if you put nice heads on them. And these actually, I think, had Remo heads here. So around 2021, fast forward, I had that Pulse kit maybe from 2018 to 2021. And in 21, I was like, this is not doing it for me. I'm ready to progress to something a bit more, I don't know, prestigious, we'll say. I didn't want to go whole hog on something that I knew very little, if nothing, about at this point. So I did a little searching and found a Craigslist, local Craigslist ad for a Tama Royal Star kit. And it was in a silver kind of pewter color. I'm not sure what it was called, but it was an early 80s, and I did a bunch of research on this kit after I purchased it, an early 80s Tama Royal Star kit. And it was one of their Luan, you know, Philippine mahogany shell kits that was wrapped in Zola coating on the inside, or I guess however they apply that. I don't know if it's wrapped is the appropriate term, but it did have a wrap on the outside, like I said, which was that silver pewterish. It didn't have sparkle, but it was kind of shiny. It was a beautiful kit, and it was kind of a steal. I bought it from a guy who had just had a storage locker full of drum sets stacked this way, this way, this way, and he's like, here, this one's 300 bucks. I picked it up, it was sold, it was perfect. All original lugs, I found out later, and tension rods and hardware, and the Omni mount was the original, and the toms. It was just like a little time capsule of shells that someone cared for and then put away for a long, long time. And I picked it up for $300, and it was a great, great kit. And I played that for until February of this past year, 2024. So 2021 to 2024, that Tama Royal Star kit, I really got a lot of value out of it. I changed the heads at least once on it, and it was a really fun kit that was beautiful to look at. You could tell that it had the Japanese workmanship of that era, which made me fall in love with the Tama, the Yamaha, and the Pearl stuff from the early to mid 80s. We'll get there in a second, but anyway, the Royal Stars was a great little kit, and it had the exact same sizes as the Pulse, so it was like basically poof, and the kit was upgraded without changing dimensions. It was 12 by 8, 13 by 9, and a 16 by 16 floor tom with a 22 by, maybe it was a 14-inch depth in 1980, but it could also have been a 16-inch depth as well. That figure I'm a little fuzzy on, but I think it might have been a 14-inch depth on that 22-inch kick. It was a really cool kit, and I regret selling it. I'll come right out and say it. I regret selling it, and I reached out to the guy I sold it to afterwards. I'm like, hey man, any chance you got that kit? And he's like, no, I just traded it for this. And I was like, damn it, it's gone. So the Royal Stars will probably never come my way again, but it's not the end of the world. I kind of replaced them in my heart with some Yamaha drums, which we'll talk about in a second. But the Royal Stars were replaced by another Tama set. I was in love with that set and realized that it was just kind of a lower middle tier set. It sat underneath the Imperial Star and above the Swing Star in the Tama lineup of the time. And above the Imperial Star was obviously the Super Stars, which were their lacquered, just gorgeous, perfect professional kits. So I started lusting after the Super Stars just by being in proximity to the Royal Stars. And I fell in love with the Super Maple finish. And if you can't tell over my shoulder, I pulled the trigger on a set in February of 2024. And it's been my favorite drum set of all time. I've had quite a few others in here since, and it still is the one that makes me feel the warmest inside when I play. And I know that's kind of a nebulous way to rate an instrument, but I think that there has to be a certain amount that's intangible, that you can't quite put to words, that just clicks for you, and you know when you know. So the Tama Superstars, also a 1980 kit. It was kind of, again, one of those magical moments where I replaced the entire kit, poof, but it was slightly bigger this time, 24 by 16 inch kick with the big size toms, 13 by 8, I believe, and then 14 by 10 with an 18 by 16 inch floor tom. And that's diameter by depth. I don't know why people do depth by diameter. Maybe you can explain that in the comments. Educate me on why some people choose depth diameter to describe the sizes of drums. I prefer diameter depth. It just works in my head for some reason. So big sizes on the Tama Superstars, and I fell in love with them instantly. I went through a couple different heads. I had some Remos on there originally, some pinstripes, and you know, that's the classic Tama Superstar head, so you'd think that would be my choice, but I went completely opposite. I went with Evans chrome heads for the toms, and I've loved those heads. I've really been impressed with them. Their durability is off the charts. I smack them pretty hard, and they do not show it at all. They sound just as good as they did maybe 4 or 5 months ago. So they're great heads. I kept the Remo Weather King on the kick drum just because it sounds so good. I couldn't bring myself to replace it just yet, and I'm gonna have to wait until it gets pretty deep divoted in there to do that. So that's the Tama Superstars, and all along, I'm talking about shells here. I pretty early on grabbed some Zildjian Custom A and equivalent style hats and other plates. So, you know, I didn't change the cymbals too much until very recently is when I've acquired a couple lots of cymbals that I've had on this channel. But for the most part, we're dealing with Zildjian Custom A stuff and different eras of that, but for the most part, it's very recognizable cymbal-wise. So that's the Tama Superstars. Next, I kind of get addicted to the Superstars, and I have only had one kit at this time. It's been one in, one out, one in, one out, one in, one out. And I was not going to get rid of this Tama Superstar Super Maple kit, but one locally came available, a Superstar in Super Mahogany that I just fell in love with. It was the power tom sizes, so it was a little later. I think it was an 83, and it had the big kick again, the 24 by 16 inch kick, but it had the 13 by 11s and 14 by 12 inch power toms. They weren't square like 14 by 14, but it was 14 by 12, 13 by 11. So they were big old toms, and that kit sounded so good. I'll try to find a sample of that if I can. it was really, really big and scary. And just like the toms had to be mounted way up here because they were so deep, and it was not fun to play in any way. I couldn't believe how different of an experience it was just by adding a few inches to those toms, because it was still 13, 14, 18, but it was 13, or no, actually it was a 16 by 16. So they kind of subverted the size trend there and went with the normal sized floor tom. And that was a beautiful drum. Oh man, that 16 by 16 was great. But the big old toms, 13, 14, and 16 were too much. So I did not enjoy playing that kit nearly as much as this one. And that was the sign, okay, I'll liquidate it. And I couldn't sell it again. It was not something anybody wanted as a kit. I had to sell each piece individually, and even that was a chore. So Cowboy Drummer, are power toms coming back? No, I assure you they are not coming back, because people hate power toms and will forever hate power toms, mark my words. I don't quite have that kind of visceral reaction to them. I think that they are a pain in the ass, and therefore I choose not to deploy them, but I guess I'm glad that they exist and that they have worked for a specific genre of music, mostly 80s rock and metal. So that Tama Superstar set, again, 1983, it didn't fix my addiction quite as much as the Super Maples, so it had to go, and I already had 2 drum sets in the house by that point, so I figured you can't go backwards to one, so I needed to replace that one, and that's when I decided, okay, this Tama stuff is great, I love it. I've had 3 Tama sets in a row now, all kind of similar vintage, and they knock it out of the park. Let's try a Yamaha. So my first instinct was to go to the Recording Custom, which is of course the most recorded drum in all the lands. It's been on more records than any drum set in the world, apparently. The desirability of that drum set is reflected in the price. You will not find a sub $1,000 Recording Custom 3 or 4 piece set, period. That's it. They're over $2,000, $2,500, $3,000. And I think it's a testament to how good they are and how well they hold up sonically. It's not like you can pinpoint that sound to a specific era and then kind of pigeonhole it there and not give it space for any other spot. It's just a very useful drum sound that's musical, and pros prefer it, I guess, or studios maybe is the more correct assumption in this case, because they are known as a studio drum set. I'm sure some people play them live, but you know, the studio's where the Recording Custom lives. It's in the name, Recording Custom. So that was a bit cost prohibitive for me at the time. The Power Tom incident kind of set me back. I didn't break even on that in any regard. So I set my sights on maybe a lower tier Yamaha set. What's another Yamaha made in Japan drum set that's pretty highly regarded? And did my research, and I next looked for the 8000 series. Whoa, those are still over $2,000. And I think there's a bit of rarity built into the 8000 series. It's not as abundant as the Yamaha 9000, which predates the Recording Custom line of drums. The 9000 was the top, 8000 was the kind of pros touring set maybe, and then there was a 7000 series at times, which was another kind of pro level series but kind of dumbed down as far as hardware and maybe finishes. And then for a very short period of time there was a 6000 series, which was basically I don't know, a intermediate tier drum set, and they eventually settled on their intermediate made in Japan drum set, the kind of the lowest tier that they made, but still a very reputable professional-ish level drum set is the 5000 series. And they have various series names attached to these individual lines throughout the years. It's not always consistent, but if you look at the badge, it'll say made in Japan, or sometimes if it's pre-1980, it'll say made in Taiwan, Republic of China, but the badge will be the same, and it will have the series, and it will tell you the size of the drum, the series, and a couple different other bits of information like year and stuff like that. So you can get all that information from a Yamaha badge with the serial number on it. So I eventually find a Yamaha 5000 series set on Facebook Marketplace. Yes, that's where it was. It was $300, or maybe it was like $289 plus I want to say $75 for shipping, which is totally fair for a drum set. It came in one box. It's made of that Luan material, the same Philippine mahogany, but with a layer of beech on the inside and maybe the outside too, but it also is wrapped so you can't see whatever layer of wood is on the outside. But it is a made in Japan drum set that's made on the same exact forms as the 9000 series. If you read on the forums, that's the information most people will give you. Whether that's 100% true is lost to time. So hopefully we're not lying here. What I can tell you is that that drum set was beautiful and is beautiful. And I actually still own most of it. Again, I tried to sell that drum set as is when another one came into my life that we'll talk about shortly. But that drum set is still a very high quality drum set and has Yamaha made in Japan hardware, made in Japan shells, and it's the same quality as the upper tier. It's just that Luan material and a PVC wrap, which isn't as beautiful as a lacquered wood, but still it's a very high quality and very good sounding drum set. This one was from 1985, so it still had kind of power-ish toms. It had the 13 by 11 and a 12 by 10. So 12 by 10, 13 by 11, and a 16 by 16. So those are considered power tom sizes, but again, and not fully square. And that drum set was a little more ergonomic because it had a 22 by 16 inch kick. And just having that smaller diameter kick opposed to the 24 inch Superstar, it made a world of difference. It didn't even have a Yamaha mount. It had a Tama Omnisphere mount when it came, so maybe that helped as well. It just had the right spacing, but it was a modern mount that mounted those toms, and I'd since replaced that and sold it, I think. But the sizes worked a lot better just due to the size of the kick. And I played that drum set for a long time, for quite a few months, I guess is the reality of it. It was replaced in a matter of months because, again, I got addicted. I loved the sound of it, and I was like, this is a mid-tier kit. I had the same experience with the Royal Stars as I did with the Yamaha 5000 series from 1985. And I said, well, I want to taste what they got in the 9000 series. And I couldn't, I still haven't, but I did find a very, very rare drum set from Yamaha. It's the YD7000 series, which from what I can tell was made 1, maybe 2 years. This is 1982, and I could not find evidence of the YD7000 series anywhere outside of that 82 year, which means probably 81 or 83 as well, a little bit, but I think that it was a very short-lived series. And in fact, it was part of that series where the 6000 series existed as well. And both the 7 and 6000 series disappeared. And for the next following years before the 90s, where a bunch of things changed, Yamaha went with the 9000 series recording custom, the 8000 series, sometimes the touring custom, I believe, or touring something, and then the 5000 series, which was the power tour series towards the late 80s. I know that's a lot of information about these Japanese drums, but hopefully that boils it down to kind of some easier to digest terms. But the Yamaha YD7000 series, that 1982 drum set, it became on par in my heart with the Superstars for the most part, because it had smaller sizes. For some, I guess 1982 was just before the major switch to power toms came en vogue across the industry. So in 1982, we still have these short tom sizes. We had a 12 and a 13 and a 16 diameter, but it was a 12 by 8, a 13 by 9, and a 16 by 16, which seems to be pretty consistent throughout the years. It's a great tom size, and oh boy, did that one sound good too. The Yamaha YD 7000 series had many finishes, some PVC wraps as well, but I do believe the nicer ones were the ones with the natural wood finishes, which is one that I had called Dark Wood. It was a pretty generic name, but it was kind of a satiny finish. It wasn't lacquered. I've been told that it was some special finish, but this was a local score. I bought this kit for $500, I believe, and it came with some hardware and some cymbals and maybe a throne and stuff. So this was just one of those deals where a guy had purchased this drum set for his daughter maybe 5 or 6 years before this point, and she went off to college or wherever, and this drum set was in his basement, and he's like, get this out of here. And those are my favorite types of drum scores, because it's not like I want to underpay for an item. I want to give someone the value of what it's worth in all cases. However, if there is the added value of you provided that someone feels it's worth it this much to get it out of their house, then I'm happy to pay that. And I don't haggle in those cases. I just pay them what they want, and you know, it's a happy type of situation usually. And this was one of those where I just drove away smiling with my windows down. This was just this past summer. So I had the Yamaha 5000 series for a couple months before that itch bit, and then the deal happened. And I was like, well, I got to do it. So I got the YD 7000 series locally, and I ended up selling some of the hardware. It wasn't great hardware. It was probably pieced together after the original hardware that was purchased for that was either lost or broken. So the hardware was not a huge value, but it was worth $50 here, $20 there to someone. So I ended up making up pretty good on that drum set, just because it was such a rare set. I think that it had way more value than that. I actually talked about selling that drum set recently and the story behind that, because I just sold that set over Christmas to a guy who purchased it for his young son, 16-year-old kid who is just getting into drumming, and he also is a vintage enthusiast apparently, so this was going to be perfect for him. So that drum set was a really nice drum set, and I think that it was certainly worth, you know, more than the $1,000 under that price point that I had it listed for. It sounded really good. It was fun to play. So that's all that I can really say about that set. And I really didn't want to sell it. It took a really good story, you know, like a good owner, a good new owner, to motivate me to sell that set. And that was really what happened there. But that opened up some space in the drum dungeon. So a lot of this drum in and out flurry of activity happened in a relatively short period of time. Because before I sold the YD 7000 series over Christmas, I picked up a Pearl set, a Pearl Forum set that was just kind of beaten to hell. And with that set was an additional tom, and really the reason that I was interested in the whole purchase to begin with. It was a Yamaha 8000 series 18-inch by 16 deep tom. So a big old cannon of a tom, made in Japan, 1989. Just a really cool piece of drum that I was interested in for 50 bucks on its own, but it came with a free drum set basically, because the whole purchase was for a Pearl Forum set where the guy took the original wrap off. Those are Pearl's lower tier under the export set. It's like maybe one tier from their bottom set, which I can't remember what their lowest tier set is, but the Forum is down there. And it's not that it's a bad set. These are made in China in most cases, and I couldn't tell you the year of it because he took the wrap off, he took the badges off. There was no indication other than the hardware that came with it, but unfortunately that hardware has remained consistent throughout many years of the Pearl Forum set because it's just real basic, real simple, small, and cheap to produce, so they just stick with it, and you know, that's how they make their profits on that stuff. It was a good sounding kit. It sounded really cool. It was, again, the standard rock sizes, back to the Tama Royal Star sizes, the 12, 13, 16 with a 22-inch kick. I think it was a 22 by 16-inch kick though, a little more modern there, but just your standard kind of rock sizes, not power toms. And it was a gigging drum set is really what it was. And the previous owner told me he gigged this drum set hundreds of times, probably in local bars and all kinds of places like that. But it looked like it was rock music that was the focus here. And it didn't have to look pretty, but it was loud. It had nice heads on it. He at least knew to put nice Remo heads on everything. And they were just Remo pinstripes, but well used. And it was a good drum set for the pickup. And I restored it a little bit. I didn't put too much effort into it just because it was not really where my heart was lying at that point. But I did restore the 18-inch tom to as much of a former glory as it could be. And it's actually for sale starting today. So I'll put that reverb link in the description below if you happen to catch this in the next however long this is available. So that 18-inch tom was fully restored. I filled holes, put a lot of hours into that just to make it look real nice, buffed out as much as I could without, you know, really getting too deep into the finish. Replaced a ton of hardware. In fact, all of the hardware, none of it was original except for the hoops, which they are still holding tight and looking good. So that has been a fun project that came out of that. But the Pearl Forum set just didn't speak to me as much, and now it's currently boxed up, hopefully waiting to be sold as well. So that one is still available as well. the hole in the drum dungeon still persisted because I sold one of the 12-inch tom, like I said, of the Yamaha 5000 series, leaving me with the kick, the 13-inch tom, and the 16-inch tom, which I eventually set up and ran with a kind of Franken kit for a little bit, but that didn't scratch the itch again. The Pearl name started a calling to me, and I remembered how good those Forum drums were. I didn't have quite the addiction to it as I did the Tama Royal Stars or the Yamaha 5000 series, but the Pearl name was calling, and a deal just came across my radar locally. Again, I love local drum deals. I'll buy drums from someone else if they're willing to ship them, but it's a heavy instrument, it's bulky, it's just an expensive thing to ship. So local drum deals all the way. This was a local guy who had a really nice DW set, and he had this Pearl Masters set as well that he just couldn't justify holding on to. He would not choose this one over his gorgeous DW set, and I understand. I have never owned a DW set and probably never will. It's a bit cost prohibitive for what I think is not an appreciable difference in sound or character or the things that matter. So that's kind of my take on the $3,000 drum set. If you've got it and you want to throw down and get a $4,000 drum set, damn, I'm all in. Invite me over. I want to play it. But for me, I kind of live in that $800 to $1,000 range, and I'm always amazed at the value that exists at that price point. Maybe not the Superstars anymore, but my Superstars, when I purchased them, I got them for, I think, $900 for this whole set. And again, they're kind of big, and a lot of people don't love those sizes, but is that value there? Absolutely. This is a vintage drum set that looks great, plays great, and is just, it's got that feel. But anyway, I don't want to get distracted on the Superstars. The Pearl Masters kit that I found locally, it was a more modern kit, a 2008 to 10. I can't quite find exact dating for these Pearl kits, but this orange sparkle fade was only produced between 2008 and 2010. And they kind of led their marketing with this color for a little bit. It was in their manuals and things like that. And the orange sparkle fade, I don't know if it stands up the test of time as far as a modern color. I think it looks really good because it's a kind of a glass sparkle wrap is what it's called. I don't know exactly what that means, but it does have some glass sparkle to it. And you know, I can't even tell if there are seams on it. It looks almost as if it's lacquered on there. So it's a very high-end wrap on the Pearl Masters kit, which is made in Taiwan. And again, 2008 to 2010, that's really the beginning or the heyday of the modern drum sizes, or what we could today consider modern drum sizes. If this video eventually ages 20 years from now, that won't be the case. But currently we live in the world of 10 by 7, 12 by 8, and 14 by 14 or 14 by 12 even. And sometimes you'll still see a 16 by 16. That size has never gone away, and it will always be a great sounding drum in most cases. But the 14-inch tom is really en vogue now, and that's what came with this one. It's 10 by 7, 12 by 8, and a 14 by 14. I can't tell if this is a 14 by 12 or 14. I haven't gotten the measuring tape on it yet, but they offered both at the time. And it sounds much deeper than I ever thought a 14-inch tom could sound. This kit is 100% maple. It is actually the Masters all maple complete shell system, and it's constructed using their SST shell method, and it's a really, really good sounding drum set. We do have a longer kick on this one. It's a virgin kick as well at 22 by 18 inches deep. So virgin kick meaning that it hasn't been cut for a post to stick your toms. A lot of the drums in the 80s and even into the 90s and back were cut to have a post mounted on top where your toms would live. That's just what was in style at that time. But we've kind of gone away from that to a certain extent. DW is really instrumental in the virgin shell resurgence and the resurgence of maple as a tone wood, which again you'll see on these Pearl Masters kit here. This was my first made in Taiwan kit. This was my first die-cast hoops set, and they're die-cast all across the board. Snare, toms, top and bottom, really nice construction. It's the first drum set I've ever had with lugs that are 100% isolated with gaskets and the bridge system that removes material from the wood. So just a really modern kit, even though it's approaching potentially 15 years old, depending on what year it is. It's still in that modern realm, and I can't say that buying a more modern kit will get you very much different or better than what is behind me here on my right. So that takes us up to today, and in my previous video I mentioned that I was going to compare these two drum sets, and that's exactly how I'd like to end this video. I thought, how better to end this video of my drum journey than not necessarily going head to head, but giving you an idea of what a more modern kit sounds like versus a very traditional big tom sounding vintage kit, this 1980 Tama Superstar to my left. So there you have it. Those are the two kits. This is a 0% scientific comparison. There are so many differences between these kits that it's kind of foolish to even call it a comparison. The heads are different, the sizes are different, the woods are different, but I do think it's worth just hearing kind of the sounds that a modern kit makes versus the sounds a vintage kit makes. And of course it's not representative of 100% of kits from this era, but I can say that this feels a lot more like all of those vintage 80s kits from Japan. They just have a feel, and maybe that's the case with these made in Taiwan kits of kind of now, but I don't have as much experience with those to make that judgment yet. So hopefully in the future we'll have more kits on here and get a better idea of what makes what sound and if it's consistent throughout, or if you can really tailor your sound now more than ever. Options are sometimes the enemy of decision, so you tell me, what do you like? More or less options when choosing your drum set? I know this was a long video and maybe it's not up everybody's alley, but I hope that maybe this can give you a better understanding of where I'm coming from on my short but intense drum journey that's taken me thus far. And I know I'm not the best drummer. You don't have to tell me that I'm not the best drummer, but I'm trying to get better and I feel like I'm improving, and hopefully you will see that on this channel. And I'm not going to talk about it. I just kind of want it to be part of the channel and you can see my improvement without me calling too much attention to it. So let me know what you think, and hopefully I will see you on the next one.